So we come to 2013, and we have, first of all, two rail legislative events. The first is that PRIA, which was created in 2008, was a 5-year program and expires on September 30th, 2013. And if my calendar is right, that's something like 21 days from now. The surface transportation authorization itself for the full highway transit public transportation program expires on September 30th, 2014. So that's 1 year plus 21 days from now. These two legislative events, the expiration of PRIA and the expiration of the Surface Transportation Act, together create the opportunity for new transportation legislation. To remind you or to tell you, the Surface Transportation Act that is expiring in 2014 was a radical compromise in the House and Senate that attempted to create a 6-year bill and ended up with a 2-year bill in 2011. So we have only had 2 years of a robust Surface Transportation Act, and that act really wasn't as robust as we had hoped because it did not adopt any of the changes that had been being discussed before it was passed. The PRIA extension, given the current legislative climate in Washington, I can't say for certainty because nothing is certain. But I do believe that the PRIA extension will be accomplished through basically extending the existing act through a legislative device so that the surface transportation reauthorization and the passenger rail authorization will be handled at one time next year. Our legislative situation in the U.S. is so complicated that it will take more than a 1-hour lecture to even scratch the surface. The Congress today, this moment, is working on whether or not to bomb Syria. This is a very serious legislative act, and both the Senate and the House are pretty much full-time doing that. Behind that is an immigration bill on the House side. Behind that is an impasse about the national debt and a more general impasse about spending and the federal budget between the Republicans and the Democrats. We have a kind of situation where it is hard to conceive, in at least the short term, of the Congress taking up the PRIA extension. And there are some who believe that the surface transportation reauthorization has no chance of being written and passed by September 30th, 2014, and that's over a year away. So we are in a very bleak legislative situation. But it also, setting aside the bleakness of the situation, there's an opportunity here to consider changes that would, in fact, create an intercity passenger rail program within the Surface Transportation Act as a separate rail title, or in an extended PRIA, which is also possible. But as you can see, I'm more optimistic about a rail title in the Surface Transportation Act than I am about a standalone PRIA reauthorization. The House and Senate have different points of view on these questions, and the legislative process has ground to a halt right now, but we will be watching very carefully to see what comes next with respect to the House and Senate. In the House, the T&I Committee, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which is chaired by Congressman Denham from California, is working on intercity passenger rail legislation and dealing with some issues that are very current, very somewhat urgent. For instance, in the statutes today, there's a demand that a new kind of train control system be installed and operated by December 31st, 2015. And the Congress has been asked to delay that date by 3 to 5 years because of a series of technical problems with installing what is called positive train control by 2015. So that is an urgent matter that is going to be part of a rail bill, and kind of the possibility of that being advanced without anything else is definitely there. So in this context, the American Public Transit Association defined a kind of proposal for an intercity passenger rail program. I think it's called the Intercity and High-Speed Passenger Rail Program. And it's in your reading, and it defines a new standalone program for high-speed rail and intercity rail. The APTA policy does not use the phrase high-performance rail, but I'm convinced that that is probably how it's going to go. It provides for continuous funding. It defines a way of creating a program that is based on state desires and objectives to improve intercity passenger rail services, and creates a way to draw funds down from the federal government to invest in those improvements, again, as defined by the states. It is a program without funding, and it does not have a source of funds, at least in the ACTA policy. It also calls for interoperability, which is a key issue to make sure that the systems that are produced by these investments are interoperable, that trains can move across state lines from one place to another. So that will require standards for electrification, standards for rolling stock, standards for train control systems. I'll list another word about funding. Part of the crisis of the whole surface transportation program, including any possibility for intercity passenger rail, is money. Where is it? Or as I put in the slide, where it is. We have a situation in the United States where a lot of our transportation investments are driven and funded by the Highway Trust Fund. And the major source of funding for the Highway Trust Fund is the federal gas tax. The federal gas tax has not changed.
Number you are trying to reach is out of service.
Good to know. Who said that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
The number you are trying to reach is out of service.
I do not know what. That doesn't seem to be me.
No, I'm trying to figure it out.
Maybe. Okay. So we have a crisis of funding in the United States. The gas tax is not sufficient. It has become less and less sufficient over the last 5 years. Its bankruptcy is being predicted. It is the source of all funds for the highway improvements in the United States. It's the source of funds for some operations of highways. It's the source of most of the funds for public transportation improvements, although public transportation program is supplemented by general funds. In order to conceive of a reauthorization for transportation and for funding for intercity passenger rail, there needs to be the invention of new sources of funds for transportation. There's a lot of jockeying about this. If you read the APTA statement, you can see it's very carefully worded to say that for the intercity program, it should not take money from the Highway Trust Fund, but a new source of funding should be found so that it's not competitive with the existing programs. A lot of concern that a new program, a new need being defined would reduce the funds available for everyone else, for all the other needs. So the legislative issue and the moment's most important matter is to find new sources of revenue, new sources of funding for transportation in the United States. It's a crisis. There are many ideas, but none that have come forward with conviction and kind of bipartisan support. And until that happens, it's unlikely that that even the transportation authorization would be passed. And with respect to the Intercity passenger rail, there may well be some agreement that there should be such a program, but funding it continues to be a dilemma. And this is a matter to watch as we move down the calendar towards September 30th, 2014. The interesting thing about this dilemma is that now the usual Band-Aid approach of taking the existing program and simply extending it without modification, which would be used sometimes and has been used a lot, won't work because there's just simply not enough money in the Highway Trust Fund to maintain the program. So the September 30th reauthorization, the authorization expiration is more than just a simple matter of extending the current bill. There needs to be more money. And the alternative to finding more money is basically a collapse of the U.S. transportation program. And that is, we can fear it, we can consider its possibility, but it is a very real possibility. So I've gone very quickly. You've got some readings that further describe the PREA, the ARRA use of funds, a table with actually the projects that you can look at, and kind of underscoring the current event, which is the desperate search for new sources of revenue.